The Earth versus the Flying Saucers
is a quintessential B-movie that taps into the Cold War paranoia and fascination with extraterrestrial life. It offers a mixture of thrills, cheesy performances, and groundbreaking special effects by stop-motion legend Ray Harryhausen. Although the film isn't exactly high art, it's an influential and entertaining piece of 1950s sci-fi cinema that helped set the template for the alien invasion genre. The film's plot revolves around, you guessed it, Earth being attacked by flying saucers. The narrative centers on Dr. Russell Marvin, Hugh Marlowe, and his wife Carol, Joan Taylor, a team of scientists who work on Project Skyhook, a U.S. government initiative aimed at launching satellites into space. Things take a sharp turn when the satellites begin mysteriously disappearing, only to be followed by the sudden arrival of flying saucers that threaten Earth's safety. The saucers, piloted by malevolent aliens, demand the complete surrender of humanity. What follows is an escalating battle between the saucers and Earth's military forces as Dr. Marvin races to devise a weapon capable of neutralizing the alien invaders. For a 1956 film, Earth versus the Flying Saucers delivers an action-packed plot, though not without its quirks. At its core, the movie is a straightforward good versus evil story, with the aliens representing an unstoppable, superior force threatening to obliterate humanity unless they submit. It's classic Cold War-era allegory, the aliens as stand-ins for the Soviet Union or any external other that menaces the American way of life. The characters, while serviceable, aren't the real stars of the movie. Hugh Marlowe's portrayal of Dr. Marvin is stiff, even by 1950 standards, and Joan Taylor's Carol is primarily there to support her husband and scream on cue. Their relationship is secondary to the action, but it fits the era's trope of the stoic male scientist who must save the day while his doting wife follows along. There's not much emotional depth to be found, but audiences at the time likely weren't looking for deep character studies. They were there for the spectacle of alien destruction. That spectacle is where Earth versus the Flying Saucers really shines. Ray Harryhausen's special effects were groundbreaking for the time and are arguably what has kept the film relevant more than 6 decades later. The flying saucers, rendered in meticulous stop-motion animation, move with a fluidity and eerie realism that was remarkable for its era. They don't just hover ominously in the sky. They swoop, tilt, and crash, giving them a life of their own. The sequences of saucers destroying iconic landmarks, like the Washington Monument and the U.S. Capitol, are some of the film's most memorable moments. These scenes cemented the flying saucer as a staple of alien invasion movies and were influential in shaping the visual language of science fiction for years to come. In terms of pacing, the film moves briskly and doesn't waste much time on filler. At just 83 minutes, Earth versus the Flying Saucers is a lean, action-packed narrative that wastes no time in getting to the good stuff, namely, flying saucers attacking major cities. There's enough tension to keep the audience engaged, but the film never takes itself too seriously. It knows exactly what it is, an entertaining piece of sci-fi fluff that capitalizes on the alien invasion hysteria of the 1950s. The film's flaws, however, are fairly evident. The dialogue is often clunky and delivered in a stilted manner, typical of many B-movies of the time. Characters speak in a rapid-fire fashion that sometimes feels unnatural, more concerned with delivering exposition than building any real rapport. The romance between Dr. Marvin and Carol feels tacked on, as if the filmmakers realized they needed a love story subplot, but forgot to make it interesting. Moreover, the film's portrayal of the aliens is quite simplistic. There's no attempt to explore the aliens' motivations beyond conquest. They're faceless, emotionless antagonists with little depth or complexity. But again, this was the norm for the era, where alien invaders were usually depicted as monolithic threats with no moral gray areas. The film is more concerned with showing off its destruction sequences than diving into any philosophical questions about extraterrestrial life. Despite these shortcomings, Earth versus the Flying Saucers is a delightful relic from a time when fears of the unknown were at the forefront of American consciousness. It embodies the anxieties of the Cold War, where the threat of invasion, whether from the sky or across the sea, was a constant worry. The film also taps into the wonder and fear of the burgeoning space age, reflecting the excitement and terror that came with exploring the final frontier. In hindsight, the film is a time capsule of mid-century American culture. The rigid gender roles, the unfailing belief in military might, and the undercurrent of Cold War paranoia are all laid bare in a narrative that pits plucky Earthlings against technologically superior foes. Yet, it's this very simplicity that makes Earth versus the Flying Saucers so endearing. It's unapologetically straightforward in its depiction of humanity's fight for survival, and that's part of its charm. In conclusion, Earth versus the Flying Saucers may not be a masterpiece, but it's a highly entertaining film that has earned its place in sci-fi history. Its innovative special effects and iconic imagery help define the genre, and for fans of classic 1950s science fiction, it's an essential watch. Even with its cardboard characters and laughable dialogue, it's impossible not to admire the creativity and ambition behind this little B-movie that dared to take on the universe.